I think that's terrible.
Why?
I mean, I get it because at the end of the day, it's the money business, and you want to make the most money. But from what I'm hearing, he can make more money in a fight with me. And if that's the case, why not fight me?
Sure. Do you think he beats Jake Paul?
Do I think he beats Jake? Yeah.
It looks like that Jake Paul is fighting one of Anthony Joshua's legs. He's fighting Gervonta Davis, somebody who's a quarter of his size. I don't even know what's going on.
I've seen Jake Paul. Jake Paul can fight. Okay, he can fight. Which is why I got Jake Paul knocking out Tank Davis.
The boxing world is in shock after Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis was officially announced.
If you do fight, what weight would it be at?
195.
Oh, wow. So he would go all the way from 40 to 95?
Yeah, I mean, it would be an exhibition.
Okay. But, and so what does that mean? Is that 3-minute rounds?
Yeah, 10 3-minute rounds.
And when you say exhibition, like, what are the restrictions on that?
No restrictions, just the fact that like we couldn't actually get it professionally signed.
Dave Allen shared his reaction, admitting he never liked Jake Paul's bouts with Mike Tyson or Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., however. He noted this matchup is fine as long as no one gets hurt, since it's just an exhibition fight. The announcement has stirred excitement and debate, with fans curious about how Davis will handle the YouTube star.
Might be happening in an exhibition. Thing with Jake Paul, I think he's a good area title level fighter, and that's a good level. Like, and you can be proud of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's good. But the Mike Tyson fight I didn't like. The Chavez fight was just farcical because he's 11 years past his best, up 6 weight divisions. But less of a problem because Chavez wasn't in his 50s. Fighting the MMA guys, again, he's fighting people that don't do the same, they're not even in the same sport. But while they're a bit older, they're still not in the 50s. So all that stuff, I won't really watch any of it. I think I've watched one fight against Tommy Fury, the only professional boxer in and around his prime years, and he got beat. But I think his area title level, I think he works really hard. I think he trains hard. And I don't think he's a bad fighter at all. I don't think he's a good fighter, but he's not a bad fighter. For his experience, he's not bad at all. But Gervonta Davis is a lightweight. So, by all means, if they make a few quid and nobody gets hurt, then great. But I certainly wouldn't be paying a penny to watch it. I think it's just absolutely ridiculous, farcical. Who wants to watch an exhibition? Gervonta Davis is in his prime years. Why is he wasting his time? Why is he having a rematch with the fella he got a draw with? Why is he not going up a weight and fighting Lopez and Garcias and them fighters? Why is he fighting Jake?
Jake Paul's official announcement on Instagram was poetic and cinematic. Size versus speed, power versus precision. One will rise and one will fall. From Atlanta, live globally, only on Netflix, Friday, November 14th. This declaration captured the exact formula Jake thrives on: hype, drama, and spectacle. By framing it as a battle of contrasts, his size against Tank speed, Jake positioned the fight as a clash of archetypes. The Netflix deal added legitimacy, signaling that the bout will reach a massive global audience. The boxing community was taken aback when journalist IFN Boxing shared on Twitter Jake Paul's explanation of his fight with Gervonta Davis. Jake clarified that it will be an exhibition with 3-minute rounds. They can't make it professional. Since it's just an exhibition, he also stated that he will come in at 195 pounds in weight. This statement immediately set the tone for the debates surrounding the matchup. Exhibition fights have long carried mixed reputations. Some fans dismiss them as spectacles, while others view them as exciting entertainment. For Jake Paul, who has built his name by blending entertainment with combat sports, the format suits his brand. Still, critics argue that setting the weight at 195 pounds and limiting it to exhibition status shows how far the bout is from a traditional professional fight.
If you do fight, what weight would it be at?
195.
Oh, wow. So he would go all the way from 40 to 95?
Yeah, I mean, it would be an exhibition.
Okay. But and so what does that mean? Is that 3-minute rounds?
Yeah, 10 3-minute rounds.
And when you say exhibition, like, what are the restrictions on that?
No restrictions, just the fact that like we couldn't actually get it professionally sanctioned.
On YouTube, analyst Showbiz Adult shared his perspective that this was the plan from the start. And Tank Davis and Jake Paul had known about it for a long time, as the fight had been in talks for many years. After the Lamont fight, the Jake Paul matchup was on the verge of being confirmed, and now it finally is. This observation shows the fight isn't a sudden surprise, but rather a calculated move. For years, Jake Paul has been searching for opponents who could elevate him beyond YouTube celebrity status and into mainstream boxing legitimacy. Davis, despite being smaller, carries the aura of an undefeated champion and knockout artist.
Always the plan. Tank Davis told you at the press conference, the post-press conference of Lamont. Honestly, here's just a video of all of this being in the works for a while now.
He's gonna call? All right. Yeah, that's how usually. Backflip, knockout, backflip, call someone out.
I will never call nobody out.
Ooh. So it'll be a first time. So more reason to tune in on March 1st.
Yeah, but I just told you that in the air and you said,
do you want that rematch next? And if so, how likely it is that we're nowhere to see that fight happen again this year? Is that the one you want next?
it's definitely the one I want next, but it's not gonna be next.
Oh, well, what is?
We might see it in a minute.
With you and Tank actually being a thing. Was that something that was talked about?
Yeah, no, it was highly talked about and in negotiations and almost ready to make happen, but he has to do his rematch with Lamont and get that W, and then we'll be able to run it back. But me and Gervonta were scheduled to fight for sure.
So, this was always a thing, and which kind of explains why they robbed Lamont Roach. Lamont Roach won that fight, bro. They robbed him of the knockdown. He won that fight. You count the knockdown. Let's just say it's a draw. You count the knockdown, Lamont Roach wins officially. All right, they robbed him of the knockdown. And which makes sense, okay? Because this is going to be one hell of a bag. And I want to make this understood. This isn't one hell of a bag because Jake Paul is a hell of a bag type of guy. They both are. It's the matchup.
When Ryan Garcia tweeted his reaction, he didn't hold back, writing, "Boxing is officially the WWE." Garcia's blunt statement reflects a frustration shared by many purists. To him, spectacle has overtaken sport, suggests that fights like Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis blur the line between athletic competition and scripted entertainment. While boxing has always flirted with spectacle, from Muhammad Ali's exhibitions to Floyd Mayweather's money fights, Garcia's tweet underscores how far the pendulum has swung. For younger stars like him, this trend is worrying. Real contenders must work tirelessly for their shots, yet a YouTuber-turned-boxer secures mega events overnight. Analysts pointed out that Gervonta Davis scrapped his rematch with Lamont Roach specifically to chase the Jake Paul opportunity. The decision stunned many in the boxing world. They further explained that delays occurred because Jake Paul initially wanted the fight sanctioned as professional, but commissions refused due to the drastic weight gap. This reveals the layers of negotiation behind the scenes. Davis, who thrives in lower weight classes, gave up a legitimate title defense for a money-driven exhibition. Jake, meanwhile, wanted legitimacy, but had to settle for entertainment rules. The committee's intervention ensured it wouldn't be a sanctioned mismatch. But critics argue that the very fact negotiations got this far shows how money outweighs sporting logic.
Netflix, Gervonta Tank Davis versus Jake Paul at State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, on Netflix, as I told you guys. So where are these detractors? Your boy that said, oh, Blue be making up stories, as I told you guys. The issue with Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis, the issue was that Jake Paul wants the fight to be a real fight, and the Boxing Commission will not sanction it to be a real fight because of the weight differences. the weight discrepancies. So because of the weight discrepancies, right? That's why the boxing commission, because Tank Davis fights at 135 pounds, Jake Paul fights at cruiserweight. And I told you guys that the boxing commission will not sanction that. So they have to have a common weight in between, as I told you guys. And so guess what you're going to get? Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis, November.
In the middle of the uproar, Lamont Roach himself took 2x, writing simply told you, LOL. His reaction dripped with irony. As the man who lost his rematch opportunity due to the spectacle, Roach positioned himself as someone who saw this twist. Coming all along, the laugh in his tweet masks disappointment as his career progression was sidelined for an exhibition. His words serve as a reminder of the collateral damage caused by these money fights. While fighters grinding their way up the ranks often get pushed aside for celebrity clashes. Again, Showbiz the Adult added to the fire with another bold claim that Jake Paul financially is very good, and also he is very strong. Now he also can fight, and says that Jake will knock out Tank Davis. This perspective highlights the transformation of Jake Paul in public opinion. He's no longer seen only as a YouTube disruptor. Jake is increasingly viewed as a legitimate threat in the ring.
Mason fight, you got this Tank Davis fight. And really a lot of Jake Paul early stuff was going viral because it was like sensational. Now, people kind of see Jake Paul as one of two things. One, he's just good now, okay? He's a fighter. Or two, people think that all his shit is fake. But I tell you this, how I feel, I've seen Jake Paul can fight, okay? He can fight. Which is why I got Jake Paul knocking out Tank Davis.
Doubling down on his commentary, Ryan Garcia tweeted again, BDW, if the fight does happen, I'd bet on the heavyweight. This line added nuance to his WWE comparison. While critical of the spectacle, Garcia acknowledged the reality of weight in boxing. At 195 pounds, Jake Paul has a massive advantage over Davis, who naturally competes at lightweight. Before Davis, Jake Paul's ambitions extended even higher. Reports surfaced that he was negotiating with Anthony Joshua, a heavyweight giant and former unified champion. While the talks never materialized, the buzz showed how Jake constantly aims to shock the boxing world. Joshua fight might have been too ambitious, but the Davis fight serves a similar purpose, generating debate, controversy, and headlines. Jake understands that even failed negotiations keep his name trending, building anticipation for whatever comes next. Now, with November 14th locked in, he has again proven his ability to secure the unexpected.
Listen, my people, we were all led to believe that Jake Paul was in negotiation to fight Anthony Joshua next up. We've heard from Jake Paul himself. He called Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua seemed like he was, he was happy to take the fight. Most importantly as well, Eddie Hearn, who promotes Anthony Joshua, he was talking about it in the media. He was telling us that they're in negotiations. In fact, I saw an article. I watched a video where Eddie Hearn was actually saying, like that's the most likely fight next for Anthony Joshua. But it seems like that fight or the negotiation between the two camps has collapsed. And as I'm reading here, my people, listen, give me a little chance. I'm just trying to catch up to everything because I'm literally just reacting to the news right now. As I told you before, I'm reading the Ring magazine and even they're stating that talks between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua collapsed over network issues. Okay, so I get it. I understand it. Anthony Joshua, he's with the Zone. I believe he's with the Zone because his promoter Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, they've got a contract with the Zone. Jake Paul, we know most of his fights, in fact, all of his fights now, the last few fights have been with Netflix. So must have been some type of conflict of interest between Netflix and the Zone, and they couldn't come to an agreement. So that fight has collapsed. What a shame, because listen, I was actually starting to come into the idea. I was liking the idea of watching Jake Paul get smashed up by Anthony Joshua. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, now, Jake Paul has decided that, you know what, I was gonna fight a 6'6" former heavyweight champion of the world. That's collapsed. You know what I'm gonna do, yeah? I'm gonna go fight a lightweight who's about 5'3" and weighs
The biggest twist in this entire scenario is the sheer unpredictability. Not long ago, conversations circled around Gervonta Davis, possibly stepping away from boxing. Yet now, he finds himself in the center of one of the year's most talked about matchups. On the other side, Jake Paul continues to reshape expectations, transforming rumors into headline-grabbing spectacles. This fight captures exactly what boxing has become today, an unpredictable mix of sport and entertainment, where every announcement feels like the next shockwave.
The last I heard from Jake Paul, he was fighting Anthony Joshua. The last I heard from Gervonta Tank Davis, he was slapping his bitch up and going to jail. Or in jail. Or was finished. Or retired. Or something like that. Now we get Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis. Wow. You know, I'm kind of relieved that he's not fighting Joshua so Joshua can focus on the rest of his career. But it also shows you that Jake Paul is working his tentacles on all sides, which is not a bad thing, because Gervonta Tank Davis, you know, if you really think about it, he is one of the biggest guys still left in America. You know, he wanted Canelo, and then he, you know, then talked about fighting Joshua, and you know, all these are big names, and that is the biggest name that I think if you were going to pass everything else up, or if everything else fell through, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Get Gervonta Tank Davis in the ring. So he had to offer him a shitload of money to take this on. And I will say this, Netflix, it's going to be aired on Netflix. It's going to be free if you have the subscription. I mean, if you really have the subscription, not the shit with the zone and they're making us get all these bullshit fights and pay for $50 here and $60 here, there, and then tell us at the end of the year that, oh, well, hey guys, it's going to be free and we're going to, no. Because I didn't pay $50 for the zone. I paid $7.
Analysts believe Jake Paul would have preferred a fight on Netflix, given its global reach. However, they explained that Anthony Joshua's long-term deal with Matchroom and his stake in DAZN complicates matters. Joshua is tied to fight exclusively on DAZ, making a Netflix event a breach of contract. Analysts add this created major obstacles as dual broadcasting wasn't feasible. In the end, they argue it's better for Joshua to focus on closing his career strongly.
And AJ is a stakeholder in the zone, isn't he? He's got the lifelong deal with Matchroom, which, I mean, I think AJ made a mistake doing that, quite frankly, because he's so big. He's bigger than the promotional company. He can do his own thing, or he should be able to do his own thing. But part of that was he fights on the zone moving forward, and I think he has a stake in the zone. So that was always going to be an issue, because I would imagine if you fought Jake Paul on Netflix, you'd essentially be in breach of your contract and then liable for God only knows what. So that was always going to be an issue. I did wonder how they'd get around that. Would they do a dual broadcast, but then the zone wouldn't have it on pay-per-view on Eddie Hearn, because that wouldn't have Turkey associated with it, you would imagine. It'd be MVP and Matchroom. Well, then surely Eddie and the zone probably want to do pay-per-view. You know what I mean? So it was always a kind of a head scratcher, and thank God it's not happening, because I want Joshua to make a good run of this is the end of his career, really. I mean, we're into maybe the last year of his career. You want Anthony Joshua to at least, at least try and make the most of whatever he has left. And for me, a Jake Paul fight was just a cash grab. I can't be as critical, or I wouldn't be as critical of Anthony Joshua taking it as I'm going to be of Gervonta Tank Davis. People, Tank Davis is the WBA champion at 135 pounds, 160, never. He might not even weigh 160 pounds outside of camp. All right, and if he does, that's because he's, ballooned up. This is a guy who I believe last weekend should have been facing Lamont Roach in a rematch. He was very lucky to actually escape with a victory over Lamont Roach earlier in the year when Steve Willis didn't call a knockdown, which was clearly a knockdown. Obviously, he wasn't concussed, flat to the canvas.
There is a huge weight difference between the fighters, which makes this clash unpredictable and dangerous. Jake holds the natural size and power advantage, giving him the ability to impose himself physically in the ring. On the other hand, Tank carries elite skills, experience, and an impressive prime record that could neutralize Jake's strength. This contrast in attributes means the fight can swing in either fighter's favor, adding intensity and uncertainty to the matchup.
So breaking news, Jake Paul will be taking on Tank Davis in the exhibition on November 15th in Atlanta, Georgia, live on Netflix. And this is crazy for multiple reasons. One, they have a huge size difference. Tank Davis, he's a lightweight, normally fights at 135 pounds. And Jake Paul, he's a cruiserweight, usually fights at 200 pounds. So there's a good 60 to 65 pound difference here. It could also mean that Tank Davis is no longer interested in competing for titles anymore and is cashing out of boxing. You know, there's been a lot of talks that Tank is nearing retirement this year, and he was supposed to rematch Lamont Roach after their first fight went to a draw. But instead of chasing the Roach rematch, instead he takes the Jake Paul fight for money. So maybe this is Tank's last, or one of his last fights. And same for Jake Paul. He just got ranked number 14 at cruiserweight after beating Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So he's supposed to be fighting other ranked contenders or top guys at cruiserweight. But instead, he's taking a money fight. But I do expect these two to go after each other. Even though it is an exhibition, I don't think it'll just be some boring sparring match. I do think they'll try a decent amount. But Tank, obviously, is a lot more skilled. Jake has a lot more size.